In 1938, Orson Welles went on the radio and convinced America that Martians had landed in New Jersey. Highways jammed, phone lines collapsed, families fled their homes. An entire nation panicked over something that didn't exist. But what's unsettling isn't the hysteria, it's what happened next. The US military didn't dismiss it as mass delusion. They studied it, they archived it, and decades later, classified documents reveal they tried to recreate that panic on purpose, using psychology as a weapon. This is the story of how fear became a tool, and why the sky might be the ultimate stage. Let me take you somewhere uncomfortable. It's 1962. The Cold War is a cage fight happening in slow motion. Castro is 90 miles from Florida. The Soviets are everywhere. The Pentagon is desperate. Therefore, a working group inside the Joint Chiefs of Staff begins drafting something extraordinary, Operation Northwoods. You might know this one, declassified in the 90s. The plan proposed staging fake Cuban attacks on American soil, blowing up ships, orchestrating terrorist events to justify an invasion of Cuba. The Joint Chiefs signed off on it. President Kennedy said no, but here's what keeps me up at night. Northwoods wasn't an anomaly. It was a template. It proved that at the highest levels of military planning, fabricating threat scenarios wasn't off the table. Therefore, once you've crossed that conceptual line, once you've written the manual for manufacturing a national emergency, every other crisis becomes a blank canvas, including the one looking down from the stars. And that's the part people miss. At this point, the story leaves documented history and enters interpretation. What I'm about to describe is not a confirmed operation. There are no declassified documents proving it was ever approved, funded, or executed. It's a theory, a claim, but it's one that refuses to die. And the reason why matters more than whether it's true. In the mid-1990s, a Canadian journalist named Sir Monist published allegations about something he called Project Blue Beam. According to Monist, this was a NASA-led psychological operation designed to simulate a global alien invasion using advanced holographic technology, atmospheric projection, and coordinated media manipulation. The goal? Create a unifying, existential threat, dissolve national borders, justify a new world order under centralized control. Monist died suddenly in 1996. Heart attack. He was 51. His claims didn't vanish, they metastasized. Therefore, forums lit up. Researchers dug deeper. And whether you believe Monist or not, you can't ignore the question he forced into the open. If governments have faked threats before, what stops them from faking the ultimate one? Here's why that matters. Let's talk about what's actually possible now. Holographic technology has advanced faster than most people realize. By 2018, the Pentagon openly acknowledged developing holographic decoys, while DARPA funded plasma-based projection research. These weren't rumors, they were budget items. But technology is only half the equation. The other half is us. Because what governments learned from Welles, from Northwoods, from every staged photo op and controlled narrative is this. You don't need a perfect illusion, you just need enough chaos, enough confusion, enough people looking at the same sky and asking the same question. Therefore, in a world where deepfakes are indistinguishable from reality, where entire news cycles can be manufactured in hours, the idea of a coordinated alien event isn't science fiction. It's just logistics. This changes everything. Here's where it gets darker. Why aliens? Why not another terrorist attack? Another rogue state? Another pandemic? Because alien invasion does something those threats can't. It unifies. Think about it. Every war we fight is tribal. Us versus them. Nation versus nation. Ideology versus ideology. There's always an other we can argue about, resist, question. But visitors from another world? That's humanity versus the cosmos. That's every border erased in a single news cycle. That's the perfect crisis that demands the perfect solution. Total cooperation, total surveillance, total control. Therefore, if you wanted to justify unprecedented centralization of power, if you needed the public to surrender freedoms they'd never give up otherwise, you wouldn't invent another human enemy. You'd invent a threat beyond humanity, and you'd make it come from the sky. Now, let me ground this. Are there documents proving a fake alien invasion plan exists? No, not explicitly. But there are breadcrumbs that taste like intent. In 1960, the Brookings Institution prepared a report for NASA called Proposed Studies on the Implications of Peaceful Space Activities for Human Affairs. One section explored how humanity would react to evidence of extraterrestrial life. The conclusion? It could cause devastating social disruption. Therefore, NASA became interested in managing that reaction. In the decades since, military think tanks have war game scenarios involving UFO disclosure, not because they believe in little green men, but because they understand perception management. They understand that what people believe is often more powerful than what's real. The CIA has admitted to using UFO sightings as cover for spy plane tests during the Cold War. They encouraged alien theories to protect classified aircraft programs. So the precedent is there, the capability is there, the strategic logic is there. The only question left is intent. Let's step back. Forget aliens for a moment. What we're really talking about is the ultimate expression of state power, the ability to author reality itself. Not just to spin a story, but to orchestrate an experience so visceral, so sensory, so overwhelming that questioning it feels insane. That's not governance. That's authorship. That's playing God with the operating system of human perception. And history teaches us that when institutions gain that kind of power, they use it. Not always, not inevitably, but often enough that we should be nervous. Therefore, whether or not a Project Bluebeam exists is almost beside the point. The real horror is that we live in a world where such a thing could exist, where the tools, the precedent, and the incentive structures all align, where the only thing stopping it might be decency, or exposure, or the difficulty of keeping a secret that big. None of those are guarantees. Here's the part that makes me uncomfortable. If such an operation were ever attempted, if the sky lit up with craft that weren't there, if global media synchronized a single narrative, if governments worldwide declared a new era of unity under crisis, how would you know? How would any of us know? You'd see the footage, you'd hear the eyewitnesses, you'd watch the experts explain it on every screen. Your neighbors would be terrified, your family would believe. Therefore, you'd believe too. Not because you're stupid, but because consensus is powerful, because isolation is terrifying, because the cost of being the lone skeptic in a world that's moved on is too high. And that's the genius of it, isn't it? The best lie isn't the one that's believable. It's the one that's unquestionable. The one where doubt itself becomes the fringe position. So let me bring this home. In 1938, Orson Welles didn't need real Martians. He just needed microphones and timing. In 1962, the Pentagon didn't need real Cuban attacks. They just needed documents and nerve. In 2025, whoever controls the technology of belief doesn't need a real threat. They just need your attention. And maybe that's what this is really about. Not whether a fake alien invasion will happen, but whether we've already surrendered the ability to tell the difference between what's real and what we're told is real. Because the invasion, the one that matters, isn't coming. It's been here for decades, not in the sky, in the infrastructure of trust, in the mechanisms of verification, in the quiet erosion of our capacity to know anything for certain without an authority figure confirming it. The ships might never arrive, but the control already has. And maybe that's the real invasion. Not the one they'd stage in the sky, but the one already happening in your mind.